So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, and I'm very excited about this one, in today's podcast, I am reviewing Monkey Man. So, let's get into it, shall we? Monkey Man is this new action movie directed by Dev Patel. Now, Dev Patel is most well known for acting in such films as Slumdog Millionaire. He was in the TV show The Newsroom. He's also been in the Best Exotic My God Hotel films. He was in Line, which is a remarkable film. And more recently, he was in The Green Knight, which I really liked. The more I think about The Green Knight, the more I really like it, and the more I like him in it. Dev Patel is one of those actors. He doesn't really do blockbusters as far as I'm aware, but whenever you see him in a film, you usually know it's going to be good because he chooses his films wisely. That's what it seems like. I'm not sure if he does, but that's what it seems like when it comes to Dev Patel as an actor. But not only does he act in this film, he also directed it. This is his first time directing a full-length feature film. He has directed short films in the past, according to IMDb, but I haven't seen any of his short films, and this is his first time directing a full-length feature film. And because of that, I wasn't terribly excited about this film. Don't get me wrong, I was looking forward to seeing it because I wanted to see what Dev Patel was like as a director. But sometimes you watch a director's first feature, their directional debut, and you can tell it's a directional debut. You can tell it's not as good as some other directors' works who have been, working for quite a while. And so when I heard this was his first full-length feature film, I was a bit like, okay, I'll check it out, but I don't have many high hopes. Because also the trailer didn't really do much for me either. I'd seen the trailer for this film a couple of weeks ago at the cinema, and I was like, it looks like it could be a fun action movie, but nothing more, nothing less. But the film premiered a couple of weeks ago now at one of the film festivals. I think it premiered at South by Southwest in America, and I was not expecting the reactions that this film got coming out of that film festival. People were raving about it, saying it was one of the best action movies in recent years, and I was like, wow. I did not expect to hear that about this film, and because of all the buzz surrounding this movie, I knew I had to go and see it at the cinema. And so I got the chance to see it at an early screening, and I went to that early screening even though I wasn't that excited about watching this film. And the Google plot synopsis of the film, get this, the Google plot synopsis is quite wild. The Google plot synopsis of this film goes as follows. A young man, played by Dev Patel in the film, because Dev Patel not only did he direct the film, he also stars in the leading role. Dev Patel plays a young man who ekes out a meagre living in an underground fight club where night after night, wearing a gorilla mask, he's beaten bloody by more popular fighters for cash. After years of suppressed rage, he discovers a way to infiltrate the enclave of the city's sinister elite. As his childhood trauma boils over, his mysteriously scarred hands unleash an explosive campaign of retribution to settle the score with the men who took everything from him. How about that for a plot synopsis? And that's pretty much all you need to know about the film before seeing it. And honestly, I absolutely loved this film. I loved it so much. This is one of the best action movies. Heck, one of the best movies I've seen in a good long while. Because I went into this film not expecting much. And I came out and I was almost out of breath. I was like, wow, now that is an action movie. It has action which is violent and gritty and nail-biting, but at the same time, it's all based in this great narrative that just gets more in depth and more compelling as the film goes on. And Dev Patel, he directs this movie like he's been directing action movies for decades. His directing is so impressive and so audacious. You'll watch it and you're like, wow, this can't get any crazy, this can't get any bloody, this can't get any violent. And then something else happens and you're like, blimey, this film is just brilliant. It's incredible. I really loved it. If you hadn't got that already, as you might be able to tell from my excitement, I loved this film so much. I have to catch my breath from talking about how much I love it, but just the more I think about this film, the more excited I get about it, the more God, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, I felt so intense watching this film, but at the same time, Dev Patel, what he does so well is the pacing. Because yes, there are there are so many intense and suspense-building scenes in this film, but he eases tension brilliantly as well. You don't just get intense build-up after intense build-up after intense build-up, because that would just be exhaustive after a while. But instead, what you get is you get this intense build-up, and then the film will slow down, but when it slows down, it's still as interesting, and it's still as captivating, and you're told about this character that Dev Patel plays, and you're told about his backstory that just develops the more the film goes on. And it's an affecting film, it's a dark film. This is not your typical action movie, this is not your typical American produced blockbuster action movie, because I don't really like those action movies. You know, I don't like the sort of action movies which have corny one-liners, which have action where there's no narrative behind it, action that just becomes literally visual noise because there's nothing behind what's going on. I don't like action movies which just feel like cash grabs. I don't like action movies where the action isn't actually that well shot. It just feels like they were making up the action on the spot. No, I like action movies which are gritty, nail-biting, and have plot and narrative behind the action, and actually are quite dark and quite intense to watch. And well, this movie isn't just quite intense, it's very intense. This is the sort of action movie I like, that is dark, and you feel every single punch that Dev Patel's character takes. Not only him, actually, there's plenty of other characters where you feel their pain as well. You might not necessarily want to feel their pain, but you do. This is a gritty action movie, and you feel the pain of the characters, which you don't really feel in many blockbuster action movies coming from American studios. And not just American studios, there are many action movies nowadays. I can't think of the last action movie. In fact, it might have been the last Mad Max film, Mad Max Fury Road. You know, other than that, I can't think of many action movies that I've gone to see at the cinema and I really felt the grit of the action. I felt every single punch, every single kick. I haven't felt that in a movie in so long, in an action movie in such a long time. And I felt that with this film from the get-go. I mean, at the start of the movie, I didn't really know what to think. But then about half an hour in, I was like, what? Wow, and there's so many moments where I was sat watching this with my brother in the cinema, and we were both just like, oh my God, we were just, you know, we couldn't really watch what was going on screen, but we couldn't turn our heads away from it at the same time, because this is a gory film. It's a violent film. It's violent with a capital V. This movie, it went there with the violence in parts where I was unsure how to feel. I mean, there was violence which really caught me off guard and made me scream in my chair, which I haven't had with a movie in the cinema in such a long time. This was one of those movies that reminded me a while of going to the cinema, because I don't know if this movie would have had the same effect for me if I watched it on streaming, or if I watched it on DVD, or if I watched it in the comfort of my own home, if I watched it on a TV in my home, which I'm currently in. I don't know if this movie would have had the same effect to me, I'm being completely honest, but I watched it in the cinema, and just that experience of watching a movie in the cinema and how engrossing that experience can be, this film reminded me of that. You know, I haven't had that in a movie at the cinema. I haven't had that at the cinema this year so far. I've seen some good movies, some enjoyable movies at the cinema, sure. But they haven't been an engrossing experience. You haven't felt like experiential events. They haven't felt as visceral and as compelling and as nail-biting as this film did. I was really taken aback by how much this film was working for me. I love how it's also ingrained in all this Indian culture. You know, I'm not somebody who's particularly familiar with Indian culture, but this movie felt like it was from somebody who was. The movie felt lived in, it felt pure, it felt real. It felt like Dev Patel wanted to tell this story. There was a passion behind this film which you don't get in a lot of movies nowadays. Something I've been missing from movies, even movies again which I've enjoyed. There's not a passion behind them. They can still feel like cash grabs, but this movie didn't feel like a cash grab. This felt like a story that Dev Patel wanted to tell. There was a passion and there was an energy behind his directing which comes off the screen in the best way possible. Dev Patel, I mean, his performance in this film, not only is it utterly captivating, it's one of those performances where he's kind of like Daniel Kaluuya or Barry Keoghan. You know, some of my favourite actors right now can look at their facial expressions and you're not entirely sure what they're thinking. What they're, you know, because their facial expressions are giving off so many emotions. You know, their facial expressions, you can like take 1,000 meanings from these actors' facial expressions, and Dev Patel is very much like that. I've always liked Dev Patel as an actor, but this is my favourite performance of his. Honestly, his performance is, like, it's so on point. And his directing, it's some of the best directing I've seen in a movie in the past couple of years. There is no joke there. The editing is so on point as well, because yes, there are a lot of editing in the action sequences, and in the past I've seen movies with a lot of action in, and there have been way too much edits. It feels like they're doing edits because of the TikTokification of society nowadays, because people are so obsessed with social media and scrolling through TikTok that you see, you know, movies which have action in the past couple of years, and it feels like they have to have all these edits in the action sequences to keep people interested. But here, it didn't feel like that. Yes, there's a lot of editing in the action sequences, but all the editing felt natural, and the editing just flowed so well in the action sequences and heightened the tension. Something I really loved about this movie. I'm telling you now, I've used the phrase quite a few times, but I'm going to use it again, nail biting. I don't know how well the cam's going to be picking this up, but I have quite... I was biting my nails a lot throughout this film. I've been biting my nails a lot throughout this film, and you can tell that when you look at the nails on my hand, that they look like they have been, well, you know, you get the point I'm making. I was biting my nails a lot throughout this film, and I really mean that. It's proper nail biting stuff. But then all the slow moments too, they don't feel slow. I was taken aback by how just captivated I was by this story and how it develops and the filmmaking. I mean, it's just, it's absolutely incredible. It really is. If I was to have any nitpicks, and these are only nitpicks, you know, you can see my love of this film by how energetic and how excited my review of this film has been. If I was to have any nitpicks, I don't think the finale is the best act of the film. I think the first two acts are better. The finale did feel a little like a video game, where you have to kill all these characters, and then you have to kill this boss number one in order to get to the final boss. You know what I mean? If you played a video game, that's what it's like. You have to kill a bunch of characters to get to the first boss, and then you get to kill the final boss. The end of the film, the final act of the film, the big finale, although it was very well shot and very entertaining to watch, don't get me wrong, I still really, really, really enjoyed the finale. It felt like the weakest part of the film. Like, some of the action sequences, some of the fight sequences in the finale felt a little too overlong. Felt a little like they could have been shaved, I don't know, a couple of minutes off some of the action, and we still would have got the same... We sort of got to the same location. We still got to the same conclusion. But, again, I still enjoyed the finale. I just felt it was the quote-unquote weakest act of the film. I still thought it was brilliant, though. And at the same time, there was some there's some needle drops in the film, and I love a good needle drop in movies, and this movie has some pretty damn good needle drops, particularly of the song Somebody to Love by Jefferson Airplane. I think that's who it's by. Yeah, I love the way that song is used in this film. Love it. But there were some needle drops which felt a little out of place. Like at one point of the film, I'm not going to go into too much details in case people haven't seen this movie yet. And by the way, if you haven't, what are you doing? Go and watch this in a cinema. You will not regret the experience of watching this in a cinema. But anyway, getting excited again. I need to calm myself down. And collect my thoughts. Anyway, going back onto what I was saying. There's a moment in the film, and again, not going into too much details, where it gets to quite a gory fight sequence involving a neck. And then a Boney M song started to play in the background. At least I think it was a Boney M song. It sounded a lot like Boney M, the people behind the song Rasputin and Daddy Cool and everything like that. It sounded a lot like a Boney M song. And yet this was quite a gory scene. I was like, why was there a Boney M song? I was both laughing because I liked the use of it, but it did take me out of the film a little bit. That was like the most jarring part of the film. The only part of the film where I sat there, I was like, yeah, not sure if that was the right song for that moment, because then the next scene had this quite dark and ominous music playing in the background. I'm like, you just had Boney M playing though. I thought you were going to play another 80s band at this point, but he didn't. It was fine. I just felt some of the needle drops, there's other examples like that in the film, but that was one which came to mind right now, and that was the most notable when I was watching the film. There were some needle drops which don't totally work, and some of the side characters I wish I got to know more about. But honestly, those are really only nitpicks, because the experience of watching this movie, I will not be forgetting anytime soon. I loved this movie. Dev Patel's directional debut is an absolute banger. This is one of the best action movies I've seen in the past couple of years. I mean, pardon me, I would have spoken about this, the last great action movie I remember watching before this was Mad Max Fury Road. And my most anticipated movie for this year is Furiosa and Mad Max Saga, the new quote-unquote Mad Max film. No, it's not technically a Mad Max film, but it is part of the Mad Max world. And I'm very excited about that, because I thought it was going to give me that type of action in a movie I've been missing for so long. I'm now worried that Furiosa won't live up to this movie. And I'm looking forward to Furiosa quite a lot still. I think it's going to be an absolute superb film. George Miller back directing a Mad Max movie. Cannot wait, because he directed all the previous 4 Mad Max films. But I don't know if that movie will live up to this film. In terms of the action, in terms of the nail-biting stunt work, which is truly on point here and so well done. I couldn't even tell if there were stunt people in this one. I mean, I dare say there were, and all credit to them, but so much of the stunt work looked like it was actually Dev Patel doing it. And again, it's going back into that whole thing. There's a passion behind this film, and you feel that from Dev Patel, not only when he's on screen playing the lead role and playing it with such nuance, and at the same time, it's just making you. There's something about Dev Patel's performance where you're constantly drawn to him throughout the film, but not only do you feel that passion in Dev Patel's performance, but you feel it in his directing. Something I haven't felt with directing in many films recently. And the way this film finds tension, the way it builds suspense, and the action is so well done, and the way everything develops, it just gets better and better and better. Sure, the final act isn't as good as the other 2 acts. It's not the best. It's not my favourite part of the film. But it was still very, very enjoyable. And yes, it's a dark movie. Yes, it's got some truly shocking moments and some moments which are very hard to watch. But it's also fiercely entertaining. Fiercely entertaining. This is a great film. I loved it. It's better than great. It's incredible. Again, as I said, one of the best action movies I've seen in recent years. I've seen, not even in just recent years, I've seen it in a very long time. I absolutely loved this. Loved it to pieces. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Monkey Man, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Because even so, I had some nitpicks with this film. In the long run, the nitpicks did not matter. I came out of this film and I was like, wow, I was speechless. Me and my brother were looking at each other like, what did we just watch? Like, we were just astounded by it. We could not quite believe it. I don't think either of us had a cinema experience like that anytime soon. Even the comedy in this film feels earned. And there's not much comedy. but there is some comedy sprinkled in there. And there was one moment which I found very funny. That kind of made fun of other action movies. Like, I'm not going to go into too many details, but you see Dev Patel's character try and jump through a window. Doesn't go according to plan. But that made me laugh because it kind of made fun of other action movies I've seen recently, where the character just jumps out of a window and he keeps running like it's no one's business. And it, that can be fine, but it's also not too realistic. And this film is actually, I do think it's grounded in verisimilitude. And if you don't know what that word means, look it up. It's grounded in verisimilitude, and because of that, it makes it more of a compelling watch, I think, because the action in this film feels real, and it makes the action feel more visceral as well. It's the whole thing in the best action movies where the story serves the action serves the story, and you really feel that in this movie. Yeah, there's just so much about it. I could go on about this film for ages, and I have already. Right, so this is an add-on. One last thing I wanted to mention about this film that I just forgot to mention when I was doing the podcast, but I meant to mention as soon as I finished recording the podcast. So this is me from beyond the podcast, and that is this. One thing I really, really loved about this film, another thing I loved about this film even, was you can tell that Dev Patel is a great lover of cinema. When he is his direction, you can tell he is somebody who has grown up being absorbed by cinema, being absorbed by these different types of cinema. I really loved how you felt that this movie was made by someone who loves, and I mean loves, cinema. His direction is stylistic, it's pure, and it's engaging. It's got that visual language you only get from somebody who truly, truly loves cinema and has a passion for filmmaking, who wanted to make the best movie possible. And you know what? I think he made the best movie possible out of this. This film is from a filmmaker who adores cinema, and you can tell that when you watch the film. I really, really, really loved it, and I was surprised by how taken aback by this film I was, because it really hit me in the feels as well. There were parts where, I'm not going to go into too much details again, but those parts where I was almost crying, and I was not expecting to get that from this film. I really wasn't. As I put down in my notes, this is a visceral, emotionally driven, experiential action movie, and it astounded me at Dev Patel's directional debut. And that pretty much sums up, overall, why I absolutely loved this film. And so, all in all, as what he said, and as I'm going to say once more in today's podcast, Monkey Man is a 10 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Monkey Man, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you didn't think it was nearly as good as I thought it was, and if that's the case, that's completely fair. But maybe you did think it was as good as I did. Whatever your thoughts are on Monkey Man, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you didn't know already, you can check out these podcasts on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, if you did listen to this podcast on Spotify today, well, you should also know that you can check these podcasts out visually. Yes, you can watch these podcasts on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform. And wherever you did watch or listen to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast, because, it makes me happier, and it also keeps you guys updated. It keeps whoever's listening updated with when I release new content. As what he said, I don't think what he said actually, so thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. Go check out Monkey Man. I'll see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.